Hi, my name is Dakota. Today I'm going to be showing you how to program an Avaya IP Office. First off, I wanted to take you to my website to show you where uh, this video and other demos are going to be posted. Right here under Photos and Videos, I'll be posting them there, and I'll also create a hyperlink directly to the video. So first you need to download the IP Office Manager software. To do that, you would need credentials to the avaya.com portal. You just go to support and then downloads. You type in your username here. Which I clearly don't remember my username. But for this instance, I don't need to show you the login, but to search, you'll have to start typing for that software, and you'll have to click on it. For whatever reason, Avaya's website does not allow you to just type in any random thing about IP Office and expect it to show up. You know it's correct when you see this choose release on the right, and then select the version that you're going to be working with. This will be dictated by the licensing that you got for the system that you're working on. For this instance, I'm using 9.1. And so what you would do is you would scroll down to the latest service pack. So see how all these dates say 2014, 2015. I'm just going to jump to the last page. And this is Service Pack 7, but that's 1X Portal. We want the Administration Pack. Okay, here's Service Pack 7 Administration. Go ahead and click on that. And this admin exe is going to be the one that you're going to want to download. I'm not going to download it for this instance because I don't remember what my login is. So go ahead and open the IP Office Manager software after you've installed it. And for this demo, we're going to be working off a offline config. We're not actually going to be making any changes to any real equipment at this point. So I'm going to select Create an Offline Configuration. And here's where you build the system virtually. We're not going to use partner mode. We're going to use IP Office standard mode. And it shows you a picture of what the system is going to look like depending on how you physically configure the hardware. We can add modules here. We can add a digital station module so that you could have more expanded digital station ports other than what the base unit will allow. We'll go ahead and say none for this demonstration. Now here's where we select the slots that are going to show up here in the base module. For this instance, we're going to use a combo DS6 P2 VCM 10. This is the most common type of card that we use in these types of systems. That's fine. I'm going to hit OK. And so now the system's going to kind of pull up a virtual preloaded configuration that I can work off of. First I'm going to check what the extensions are. 200s is fine. I'm going to show you a quick tip how to renumber those extensions if for whatever reason your client is not wanting the extensions in the 200s. So you would just go to Tools, Extension Renumber, and you select your start extension, end extension. For this instance, we're going to change it to 110 for the start extension. We'll hit OK. It's gonna. There it goes. So it just renumbered them all without having to do it manually, just like that. Okay, so really you want to start with the System tab. You want to give this system a name, so you can say Client Deeply Digital, or we'll just call it Deeply Digital. Okay, so the TFTP server and the HTTP server, these are going to need to stay the same, just 0.0, if the system itself is going to house the configuration files for the phones. If we're running a Voicemail Pro configuration, which I won't demonstrate in this video, you would set these to the Voicemail Pro server. So we want to go ahead and put in a time server here. Always a good idea. Well, it is pulling off of Manager, but Manager isn't always running, so we're going to go ahead and pull it off a time server. So I always go to nist.gov. Nope, that's not where I go. This one's it. So it's tf.nist.gov, and it gives us a list of servers, shows us what they support, if all services are running, what it is. I always typically use the Fort Collins, Colorado server, and I just copy the IP address there, and I paste it in right there. Go ahead and select your time zone. We will be on Mountain Standard Time. And it automatically pulls in daylight savings information. And we won't change any of this right now. If you had an SD card, and if this was a real system, this serial number would show up here. And that's how you actually order licenses for the system. Okay, we're going to hit OK. And then we're going to go to LAN 1. We're going to give this system an IP address. By default, this is the IP that Avaya gives the LAN 1 port. So we're going to go ahead and change it to 1.20 because that's what the client subnet's going to be. And we always try and use the last octet of that IP address, .20, as the phone system, just as a standard. If that's not available, then you can do something like 120 or 220, just so long as you're not conflicting with the DHCP pool. DHCP mode, we're going to disable it because it's not a client, it's not a server, it's static, so it's going to be disabled. Go ahead and hit OK. Now we're going to go to VoIP. So if you're actually running VoIP extensions to the system, you're going to want this H.323 gatekeeper enabled. If that is not enabled, VoIP phones will not register to the system on LAN 1. So that's already enabled, so we don't have to worry about that. If you have any local SIP phones that need registered, you would want to enable that. I'm just going to go ahead and enable it for this demonstration. And SIP trunks are already enabled, so that's good because we will demonstrate how to set up a SIP trunk on this system. Network topology, none of this really matters. You can say static port block if the phone system is behind a firewall, just so it kind of understands how to get out to the world. Go ahead and go to LAN 2. We're not going to change anything in this for now. In some instances, we will set this with a public IP address and route the SIP trunk out this interface. But for this demonstration, we will not. So go to your DNS, and we're going to go ahead and set this to just Google's DNS. Hit OK. Tab over to voicemail. We're using embedded voicemail. It's in IP Office mode. You can go into Intuity mode if you want to. There are different features and stuff that go along with those. I don't know them off the top of my head. I could put that on the website though after I finish this video. That's it for this tab. You really don't need to change anything there. You can set like a reception breakout, so if a caller calls into the system and they hear a voicemail greeting, if they press 0, you can define that right here. You can say, well, go to extension 10, because that's the receptionist. That's sometimes a good thing to do. Jump to the telephony tab. You really don't want to change anything here. This is where the system standard defaults are set. So if you put someone on park, this is where that time is set, how long they're on park before it rings back, hold timeout, all of that. Tones and music, this might be useful. In this instance, we're not going to have on hold music, but if the client wanted an iPod or they had an external device that they wanted to inject into the system for music on hold, you would just hit this drop down right here and select external. And then that will activate the 3.5mm jack on the back of the phone system so that you can input audio that way. If you do a WAV file, there's a lot of particular parameters. It needs to be a WAV file, obviously. PCM format, I think 16 bits, and it can't be over 60 seconds, I believe. So there's a lot of limitations with the WAV file. Ringtones, you can kind of add and change. Well, you can't really add ringtones, but you can change ringtones here. It's not a, we normally don't touch that. I'm just going to kind of glance through these tabs. If for some reason you wanted email alerts when you get a voicemail, you could set that up here. So twinning, what twinning does is if you want your desk phone at your office to ring simultaneously with your mobile device, your cell phone, twinning would be that option. So see this send original caller ID party. So what that would do, as long as this system is using a SIP trunk, it would send out the caller ID of the caller calling your office, your desk, to your cell phone. So it wouldn't show that the office is calling, it would show the caller ID of the person who's calling you. This is helpful. We really don't need to mess with any of these things. I'll just go over it just real quick. Go ahead and hit OK. You have to hit OK anytime you jump to another category. Otherwise it will prompt you, are you sure you want to save this, and so on. So let's jump to lines real quick. For this instance, we're not going to be using analog lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to set all these to out of service. But if you did want to use an analog line, what you would want to do, see how this says incoming group ID 0 and outgoing group ID 0? This is how the phone system actually sees that there's a call coming in and understands where to route it. This number right here is going to tie to the incoming call route category. I'm going to jump over to there just for a second just so I can demonstrate call routing. So see how there's already line group ID 0 call route. This actually is just in the system by default, and it's going to go to the 200 main hunt group. And so it's going to ring all the phones in that group by default. I'm going to jump back to line for a minute, and I'm going to create a SIP trunk here. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to say new, and I'm going to say SIP line. Okay, so now all of this information is going to be acquired off of the Clear Networks VoIP portal. And I've got that open already, so I'm just going to jump back and forth and copy and paste that information. So I'm onto the PBX connector, and I'm going to copy the realm, and that's going to be the ITSP domain. Line number 17, that's fine. Don't go crazy. Just leave it to whatever it's telling you that it wants to be. If you have multiple SIP trunks coming in with different carriers or something, it's going to just say 17, 18, 19, and so on. Jump to the next tab. I'm going to paste that in here as well. So it's using port 5060. You can actually use a different DNS server here if they have a local DNS or something like that to resolve that host name. Now we're going to jump all the way over to SIP credentials. We're going to skip these 3 tabs for now. We're going to hit add. And here's where the username password is stored for the SIP trunk. So we're actually going to go to the Clear Networks portal. We're going to copy the username. We're going to put that here for both the username and the authentication name. Contact, we will leave blank. Password, we will copy that from the Clear Networks portal. Expiration minutes, 60 seconds is fine. That's what it's set to on the white label or on the Clear Networks portal, so that's not a big deal. Hit OK. Now we're going to jump to SIP URI. Now we're going to hit add, and for inbound, we're going to select. Do you remember that line group ID under the SIP tab? It's number 17. So we're going to say 17, and we're going to use registration. Number 1, which is the username that we just set in the SIP credential. And we're going to go ahead and just make all of the local URI a star, the contact a star, and the display name a star. Leave the outgoing group 0, that's fine for now, and this is max number of channels per this incoming URI. Hit OK. And then we're going to add another one because we haven't defined outgoing yet. So go ahead and do 17 for outgoing. Go ahead and leave 10, that's fine. You're going to have to select your registration again, and then change your local URI to use internal data, contact, use internal data, and display name, use internal data. And so what this will do is it'll actually manipulate caller ID when you're calling out, and I'll get to that and show you guys how that's set up. So go ahead and hit OK. Hit OK there. Your SIP line just appeared there in the line window. So now that is set up, we do need to set up some incoming call routes that this SIP trunk is going to be handing us so that we can route calls correctly. So for this instance, I'm going to right click, say new, and this is going to be line group ID 17. Incoming number, I'm just going to use a fake number, 970-555-5555, and this is going to be the number that is associated with the Clear Networks portal that is pointing to this PBX connector. You can actually do some advanced routing as far as incoming caller ID, and you can route certain people's calls to certain users, stuff like that, but I won't get into that in this demo. This is just basics. Go to destination. You're going to want to select a destination for this call route, and for this instance we're just going to send it to the hunt group 200 main. Hit OK, and so that just showed up there, and now we're just going to go follow the route. So let's go to the group 200 main and let's see who's in it. Looks like everybody is in the 200 main group. The ring type is collective. You can change this depending on how the client is wanting the phones to ring. Collective and collective call waiting. If you're on the phone with collective and the phones ring in, your phone will not ring. You won't hear a beep. If collective call waiting's on and you're on the phone, you will hear a beep in your ear just telling you another call's coming in. You have the opportunity to answer it. You've got sequential. So what this will do is it'll actually ring extension 110, then it will ring extension 111, then it will ring extension 112, and it'll ring each extension for 15 seconds. You can do a rotary style. So what it'll do is it'll ring extension 110, it'll ring extension 111, it'll ring extension 112 in order until someone answers it. If 113 answers it, then it will when the next call comes in, it'll just pick up where it left off, and then extension 114 will ring, 115, and so on. You also have longest waiting. We really never use longest waiting or rotary, but the only reason you would use it is if it was a call center or something like that, or a sales team, and they wanted to have a fair amount of calls, so it wasn't just, the calls weren't just going to quick draw McGraw, you could use that. But for this instance, we'll just use collective call waiting. It says, changing this ring will duplicate user entries. Do you want to proceed? Yes, that's fine. We'll leave the system default time. That's just fine. We're going to go ahead and enable voicemail. We're going to give it a password of 1234. Oh. And it's going to tell me that it's not long enough, but it's okay for this demonstration. We're going to go ahead and put the telephone number that we just routed into the system in this field, the SIP name. This will dictate outbound caller ID. Hit OK. So that hunt group is set up. We're going to go ahead and move to users at this point. Okay, so for this instance, I'm just going to make up a few names just to show you kind of how the names flow into the system. So we're going to call this one John N. And we're going to set this password to 1234. Most all these passwords are 1234 by default. And John's full name will be John Nelson. His extension is 110. Yeah, he's good. So it's down here where it says working our user rights. This is where we'll actually create a user rights template that all the phones will use, so we don't have to specifically program buttons and stuff for just his phone. It'll be a kind of a global setting. So see, I haven't created that yet, so I'm going to go ahead and just hit OK, change his name, and then I'm going to jump over to user rights. I'm going to go ahead and create a new user rights template, and I'm going to call it, since we're using 9608 phones, actually we're going to use 9508 phones. I'm going to use a digital handset. So we're going to call it 9508 VM. So what I'm dictating by saying VM is this user rights has voicemail. Then I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to call it 9508 no VM, because this template will not have voicemail. So for instance, you'll use this template on the conference room, because the conference room doesn't need voicemail, or like a break room or something like that. Hit OK, and you're going to want to create one more for the fax machine. You just call it analog, and then hit OK. We're going to jump back up to the 9508 VM. We're going to go to short codes. We don't need to put anything in here. Sometimes when you're doing more advanced type programming, you can put things in here. But notice how this says not part of user rights. So when this user rights template is enabled, this field will not apply to that user. We're going to jump to button programming now and see how it says not part of user rights. We're going to change that to apply user rights value. So the user will get this information, and it will show up on their user when they're assigned this membership. So by default, we always create call appearances, and we just label it call, and then you're going to go down to appearance. You just say appearance. It's going to say A equals. It's going to ring immediately. Just hit OK, and we're going to do that 3 times. Okay, now these phones, there's 4 buttons on each side, so I don't want to put a park button right here, because then park 1 and park 2 will be split up. So I'm going to put a do not disturb here. And now I'm going to go ahead and create the park buttons. Okay, so this is the basic telephone programming that we do. We give them parks, we give them do not disturb. Other features like voicemail, redial, all that stuff is already built into the phone, so we don't have to create anything for that. But we're going to go ahead and give them some busy lamp fields. So we're going to go in here and we're going to say John, because he's our first user. He's extension 110. He's our receptionist. We're going to go to user, and then we're going to select him from the drop down here. So he's extension 110, so we'll go ahead and select him there. And so now when we save this configuration, if John's on the phone, on everyone else's phone, it'll show a little red light next to his name, just indicating that he's on the phone. You can create as many of these as you want. Let's say Nancy is going to be extension 111. And so on and so forth. If you're doing an EU24 or a sidecar type configuration, just be aware that just by putting all the names back to back all the way down doesn't necessarily mean it's going to show up on the sidecar. You'll have to start those names or buttons at 24. That's why they call them an EU24. So you would just say, you could call this one Billy. And we'll just do 117. And so on the sidecar of the phone, Billy will show up in the spot 1 on the sidecar. That's pretty much it for button programming. They might want a night service button, so I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. I'll just say night service. So what that could do is it could put the hunt group out of service so that it rings through to an answering service or go straight to voicemail or something like that. We'll go ahead and say it's going to put the hunt group into night service. One of these. Well, for this instance, we'll just disable the hunt group. It routes the same way, and I'll show you that. So the only hunt group we've got is 200 main. So we're going to be, when this button is pressed, it's going to disable the hunt group. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to just jump through the rest of these tabs real quick, and then I'm going to jump over to where that night service is dictated at. Telephony, you really don't need to set anything here. This is where you actually assign the memberships to the users. We're going to go ahead and select all of them, except for 16 and 17, and I'll show you why. Voicemail, it is enabled, but it wasn't applied to their user rights, so I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Forwarding, you can block forwarding so that the user can't even forward their own phone, but we don't want to do that for this instance. Okay, so go ahead and jump to the group for a second. Go to the fallback tab and see how it says out of service destination. You can actually give the phone system a destination when this hunt group's out of service. So for instance, I'll just say we're going to forward it to John's phone when this hunt group's out of service. So not all the phones ring, and it just rings to the receptionist's phone, and voicemail will be captured there. And I can actually set the group out of service right now and save it, but I'm not going to do that for this instance. Okay, and then I'm going to jump back to the user rights group so that we can finish creating these. And so on. I'm going to disable voicemail, and I still want to apply that attribute to their rights, even though it's disabled, because this is for the no VM, no voicemail. Okay, so now I'm going to go to analog. Analog's a little different. We definitely don't want voicemail for analog, because you don't want voicemail picking up before the fax machine does. We're going to assign it to 17, extension 17, and I'll show you why. We'll give it a call appearance just so it can make a call, even though this button really doesn't appear on anything. It just gives it the ability to call. Now this is important. Actually, we're going to apply that. Now go to shortcodes. Now you're definitely going to want to apply user rights for this tab, and we're going to create a shortcode specific for this fax user. We're going to do in, which in other words, when the phone picks up or the fax picks up and it dials a number, this is what in represents. So it says any number of characters, as long as it's numbers, and then we're going to define what it does. So we want it to dial, and we're going to say line group ID 17 because that's the SIP trunk line group ID. And then we're going to go ahead and say in because we want it to carry the numbers that it dialed right on out the SIP trunk. Go ahead and hit OK. So it's code in, telephone number in, feature dial, line group ID 17. Hit OK. Okay, that's saved. Now let's jump to extensions a second. Let me just explain why I've been assigning extension 117 for the fax. See how these say BD1, 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 BP1, BP1. So these stand for base digital 1, base digital 1. The BP stands for base phone 1. So it's actually an analog port. And notice you'll see the picture change. It's like an old analog phone. It says analog handset. So this is the combo card. This is where the combo card comes into play. It has 2 analog phone ports on it. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump to users, and I'm going to just specify that this is the fax now for extension 117. I'm going to go ahead and, we already assigned it the analog user rights, so that's good. Hit OK. And now I want to make sure that extension 117 is not in the hunt group, so I'm going to jump back to the hunt group for a minute. Yeah, see that? So let's go ahead and remove that. Hit OK. Okay, so incoming is working. Extensions, I haven't given everyone a name or anything, but they have user rights. They show up on the system. They can call out. I need to give them outbound caller ID. Otherwise, it's going to just show up as unknown. So click on the user that you want to give them outbound caller ID, arrow over to the SIP tab. Click on the SIP tab, and under SIP name, this is where caller ID is kept. Just hit OK. We're going to go ahead and do that for all of them. And you want to give the fax machine the fax number so that people aren't, responding or sending back to the fax to the main number or something like that. So we'll just say it's like a 249-5555. See, if I just jump to the next one without hitting OK, it's going to say record not saved. Would you like to save these changes? Hit yes if you want to save it. If not, it's kind of a way to undo what you did. Let's go to the next one. 0, 5, 5, 5, 5. Okay, you have to do this for every extension. Okay, now that all those are set, everyone's outbound caller ID is good to go. We're going to jump over to shortcode. And the reason being is we want to give everyone a way to call outside of the system. Because right now there's no button, there's no way for the system to know if they're dialing internally or they're dialing externally. So we're just going to jump to shortcode for a minute. And by default, the system created this 9N. So what this is meaning is when a user dials 9 and a number, it's going to pick up line group ID 50, which I'll get to that in a second. It's not 17, it's 50 because it's an ARS table. And it's going to go ahead and carry that number right on out. So there's a way to call out. So we're going to jump to ARS table, and I'm going to show you where this line group ID 50 is coming from. So see how this says main, and it's ARS root ID 50? And so this is where 911 is kept. The system tries to understand any possible combination of 911, and this is where that table actually resides. And by default, it's going to go out line group ID 0 because that's what the analog lines are set to. But we're going to change all those to 17. Because we want it to call out the SIP trunk. Okay, looks good. I'm going to hit OK. That's all up to date. A lot of clients really like the feature Auto Attendant because they like the caller to be able to dictate which voicemail box they want so that all the voicemails don't just end up in one box. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. I'll go ahead and create a new one. We're just going to call this AA Day, all caps. We need to give the menu option a name of some sort. We'll just say Day AA, all lowercase, and we're just going to hit OK. And now you see after I hit OK, this shortcode appeared. So this is actually how you record the greeting for this auto attendant. So once I save this configuration, and this configuration becomes live on the system, you can dial star 8401, and it'll say, please record after the tone. And you would say, thank you for calling business XYZ. For John, press 1. For Nancy, press 2. And so on and so forth. Those numbers are dictated right here in the Action tab. So go to Action, and then right-click under Action, or hit Edit. And then you would just do a normal transfer, and you're going to go ahead and select that user. So we said for John, press 1. So that's where that's configured. Always try and set 0 to the reception or the general mailbox of some sort, just because that's an easy way for people to just, get to someone or get to someone's mailbox quickly. Just like that. Hit OK. And now we need to route calls to this. So you can route calls to it one of two ways. You can route calls directly to it without ringing the group, or you can route calls to it after ringing the group. I'm going to show you, I guess I can show you both. So this AA day, I need to take a note to that, copy. So go to shortcodes for a second. It's kind of funny how you have to route to auto attendants in Avaya IP Office. I'm not sure why they did it this way, but it's just the way it is. We're going to create a new shortcode. We're going to call it forward to AA feature. It's going to be auto attendant, and we're going to go ahead and paste in the auto attendant name. Line group ID can be 0. That's fine. Actually, I need to change the code to a code. My apologies. So see how all these star codes are already used by default? They do something. We don't want to conflict with that, but we're going to just fill one in here. So see how there's not a star 58? I'm just going to go ahead and create star 58 for this one so that I know I'm not conflicting. Go ahead and hit OK. And now I want to copy that code. And so now jump to users for a second. Go ahead and right click and create a new user. We're going to call this user forward to AA. Excuse me. We'll go ahead and give it a password for grins. We don't really have to give it an extension number, but I am just for grins 199. Get it up here way away from the extensions so that we don't run into it later when they go to add phones. And then that's really it for this. Then jump to the forwarding tab. You want to say forward unconditional, forward hunt group calls, and you're going to forward it to *58 because that's the shortcode that we just created. Go ahead and hit OK. And it's going to ask you, would you like to create a VoIP extension for this extension number? We're just going to say none. And so there's my user. And so now to route calls to the auto attendant first, I'm going to go to incoming call route, and I'm going to change this destination directly to the 199, which it actually shows us the AA day here. They may have fixed that in version 9.1, which I would select that if you see it. If not, select the 199 forward to AA. But for this instance, we're going to go ahead and go back to the hunt group. Okay, and so now I'm going to show you how to forward to the auto attendant after the call rings the hunt group. So go ahead and jump to the hunt group tab there, and they're going to create a new one. We're going to call this main overflow, and we're going to set it to sequential, and we're going to go ahead and add in that forward to AA. Hit OK. And so this is going to be the only user here. So what we want is when the call hits this group, it directly rings to this user, which then forwards to the shortcode, which then connects it to the auto attendant. We're going to go ahead and make sure voicemail's off on this one. We don't need to set any of those. Just hit OK. And now we need to tell the main group to overflow to that group. So we're going to go to overflow. We're going to turn it on. We'll just say after, I think we have to do more than 15 seconds. Just say 19 seconds. We're going to hit add overflow time. Oh, I need to disable voicemail because it's going to pick up after 45 seconds. So we're going to overflow. We'll just say 45. No, my group's not showing up there. I'm not sure why my... Oh, because I didn't give it an extension number. You have to give your hunt groups extension numbers. I apologize for that. Hit OK. We just put it as the next extension number for the hunt group in line. And so now I'm going to go back to 200 main. I'm going to go to overflow. I'm going to hit add, and there it appears. Hit OK. Hit OK. And so now the calls will flow to the auto attendant after it rings the hunt group for 45 seconds. That's really it in a nutshell. You can do a lot more advanced things, which I might do a lot more specific videos showing those types of things, but really this is it. You just hit save, and I'm saving this to the file because I'm not actually working off of a system. Actually, I do want to show you one more thing. Go down here to licenses. This is where you actually put the licenses that you have for your serial number of your SD card. You'll have an Excel file that's sent to you by the distributor, and you'll go to the encrypted keys, and you can just copy and paste them right into here. You could just right click and you can say paste, and those will all show up. You just hit OK. They will show not invalid but unknown or something like that as far as status. Once it saves to the system and it checks it and everything, it'll show that it's a valid license there. But anyway, I guess if you guys have any questions or want to contact me, just jump to my website and go to the contact button, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or show you guys any more advanced types of things with this system. Anyway, have a good night, and we'll see you around.